everyone. It's time for us to go and take a look at the beloved Nintendo 2DS XL and see how this particular console holds up in 2025. Now, the craziest thing ever, right, when you're thinking about it, is that these particular consoles came out such a long time ago, and for the most part, in some ways, these consoles may not be necessarily worth buying for the everyday average person anymore, but I will tell you, for a lot of people out there might still be some reasons why a Nintendo 2DS XL might still be on their bucket list of basically buying. These are still very interesting consoles, to say the least, and I will probably tell you, for a lot of people out there, if you're going through and picking up a console, I'm a big fan of the 2DS XLs, I'm a big fan of the 3DS in general, the 3DS lineup, and I'm very excited to talk about it. There's been a couple things that have changed in Nintendo's lifespan and gaming system. We've got the Nintendo Switch 2, but I still look at something like a Nintendo 2DS XL, and I'm still kind of a fan of it, right? So before we get too far into it, I want to lay some groundwork first. The 2DS XL was kind of like a cheaper version of the 3DS. It's very similar to like a Switch Lite and the Nintendo, Switch. If you think about the Switch and Switch Lite, there's a couple of features that are kind of stripped away from the Switch Lite, like docking and better display and stuff. But for the most part, for 80% of things you can do on Nintendo Switch, you can also do on the Switch Lite. With the 2DS XL and the 3DS, I feel like it took the best things from the 3DS and just stuck them inside of the 2DS XL. And I feel like the 2DS XL was kind of my favorite one out of all the lineup. Now, I like the build quality of the 3DSs more, but still, I never used that 3D toggle. I feel like it was kind of lame. And this in and of itself was another one of those really interesting things that kind of ended up happening here too. So personally for me, from that side alone, I feel like this was a really interesting thing to kind of keep in mind there. So on top of that, I feel like another thing here is the fact that between both these phones, or not both these phones, with the Nintendo 2DS XL, when you kind of compare it against some of these other models that came out too, like the 2DS, 3DS, and new 3DSs, I still feel like the 3DS and the 2DS XL, the better one out of two of them were kind of the 2DS XLs. When you take a look at the outside of the 2DS XL, this type of console is still giving you a pretty good layout. I love the way it felt. It felt like actually a very, very nice one. It felt like a pretty nice, good, powerful console for the most part. So that was something that was actually pretty nice there as well. And when it actually came down to it too, I feel like the build quality of this felt also very, very nice. So that was, another really good asset for this type of device when it came down to it as well. Now, on top of that, when it came down to it, when you're actually going through and kind of looking around this thing, you're still going through and you're still getting a very decent display. The display here was a 4.88 inch top panel. Then you're also getting a 4.118 inch basically bottom panel. So the panels on this thing were actually pretty decent, and like I stated, they felt very good. They didn't really look that bad. The bottom screen was touchscreen, but even at this point, most things were touchscreen, so it's not that big of a selling point anymore. And the fact that they removed the 3D toggle kind of showed that, the 3D toggle may have been a little bit of an overkill system. Maybe they really didn't need it. Maybe it was just kind of one of those things that just seemed like something they would just kind of throw in there, and then that was kind of it. So I kind of did feel like when you were going to go through and pick up a particular device, it was actually something that was very, very, funny to kind of think about, because you were going to go through and use these types of displays. And by the time this console came out, it came out around 2017. It was discontinued in 2020. We already had the Nintendo Switch. So this was kind of like the Nintendo Switch Lite before the Switch Lite came out, because this was the only way for a couple generations where you could play 3DS games. So that's why there's still a lot of 2DSs and 2DS XLs out, because, when you walked into a Best Buy or you walked into some sort of, Walmart or something, if you wanted to play 3DS games, this was kind of the only way to go ahead and do it as of that point. Now, on top of that, when you take a look at this particular console, you're still getting the charging port, you're still getting the ability of playing both DS and 3DS games inside of it, which we'll get into in a second. And this thing did take micro USB, so you could, just plug in a micro USB port and plug this thing right up. And then you also had that SD card slot. So that was something that was very nice as well. I'm so glad they still had SD cards. But now with the Nintendo Switch 2, they've now changed the micro SD card slot functionality now, where you have to go ahead and use kind of like a proprietary micro SD card. It only supports a certain type of it. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something that's actually very interesting when it comes down to it from that side. So when I kind of take a look at this particular console, I'm actually very, very surprised on how this console has held up, because a lot of the fundamentals that this console kind of came out with, honestly, they still kind of hold up well. They still look pretty good. And they still Nintendo has learned a lot from their 3DS lineup, and they've kind of shelved that over to the Nintendo Switches, we already know what Nintendo's going to do with the Switch 2, but they already have the more expensive one that just got announced, and then they're also going to have a cheaper one that comes out as well. And not saying that Nintendo, like the 2DS was the first one they did this with, because they also had like the Nintendo Wii Mini, they had the DS, probably some cheaper models of those consoles at that point too. But it's just the fact that they're still going through and kind of giving us a lot of capability from the standpoint is actually a really nice thing. But the coolest thing is with the 2DS in 2025 is the fact that we have so many games that are available within this console. There's like an endless amount of games that you can just play inside of this type of device, and that is something that is so beautiful to kind of have. I love being able to go through and buy these types of consoles and these types of gaming consoles when they are going to give us this type of capability. I think this in and of itself is something that is super cool. I love seeing it, and I'll probably tell you in a lot of ways, if you're about to go through and like pick up some sort of a device, it is actually a very nice thing to basically have that right there. So personally for me, I think this in and of itself is a really nice thing. I'm a massive fan of that when it comes down to it. So being able to go through and get that type of capability right there is something that is super cool. And I'm just like, there's so many games. Not only can you play standard 3DS games, but you can also go through and play a lot of Nintendo DS games as well. So you have just an awesome, humongous library of different games that you can basically choose from. And like I said before, personally for me, I think that is in and of itself a really cool thing to kind of have at the end of the day. To kind of have that type of capability of going through, basically being able to play all those different types of games that came out for these consoles is something that is so legendary. I think having that type of capability, again, is just so cool. And it makes it seem really nice when you're able to go through and get that type of layout, because there's just like an endless amount of games that you can just play on from there. So definitely, in my personal opinion, if you're going to go through and like pick up a gaming console, this thing still does have like a lot of capability when it comes down to that side. But on top of that, another super cool thing to keep in mind here too is that if you are about to go through and like pick up a certain device, if you're going to go through and pick up something like this, it does make a lot of sense to be able to go through and buy something like one of these ones, because they're going to basically just kind of run through, and the games for this thing aren't even that expensive anymore either. So the gaming library behind this console has gone down. It's like not that expensive anymore. And I do think if you are, once again, going to go through and pick up one of these types of consoles, it does make a lot of sense to go and pick them up because they're just not that expensive anymore. So personally for me, if I'm looking at a device like this, right, I really do think that the Nintendo, 2DS XL still does make a lot of sense to go and pick up. I think these types of consoles, are still very good. They have a lot of capability. They're very powerful, and they genuinely do make a lot of sense to go ahead and buy. With that being said though, there might be some better options out there for some people. Like if you want to buy a Nintendo Switch Lite, I do kind of think that one might make a little bit more sense for some people. Like that one might make a little bit more sense just in case somebody wants to go through and like buy a device that's going to be a little bit more powerful. The Switch Lite would kind of be the one that I would kind of recommend people to buy at that point. Like that one would probably make more sense. But I think the 2DS XL is still a very good device. I think that one looks very, very good as well. And if I'm about to go through and pick up a device, that would kind of be the one that I would look at as kind of being the better one here for the most part. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there too. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.